Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining tonight's session. My name is Panashe, and I'm a budding social entrepreneur passionate about supporting people to realize their innate potential. Now, today I'm happy to be sharing insights on today's theme, which is social entrepreneurship, where we're going to delve deep into defining social entrepreneurship, talk about how you can activate your own social skills of social entrepreneurship, um, and learn how you can identify problems, challenges, needs, turning them into opportunities, and how social entrepreneurship differs from other types of social entrepreneurship in its approach. So I'm really glad to be sharing my insights based on my own experiences. Now, we're going to start by defining social entrepreneurship. What does it mean to be a social entrepreneur? And what is involved in social entrepreneur? What is the scope of social entrepreneur? So happy that you're a part of this discussion and that you can enjoy the very best. As usual, remember to leave your comments in the chat section and share your thoughts and insights. Yeah. All right. So we're going to start by defining social entrepreneurship. What is social entrepreneurship, and is it all about? How does it look like exactly? Yeah. So happy to have you once again. So social entrepreneurship really is that type of entrepreneurship that transcends addressing the effects of challenges, right? The surface level impacts that we see every day, right? We go to specific communities, and those communities are facing absolute hunger. They are facing hunger. They're facing um, poverty. And so many challenges like that. Poor housing. And things like that. So with social entrepreneurship, right, we go beyond solving the challenges. Is the challenge that we see, the challenge of poverty, the challenge of limited access to essential services, limited access to essential needs, human needs, right? Things like food, basic human needs, food, shelter, and clothing, things like that. So with social entrepreneurship, we're taking a step further, right, and addressing the root causes of those challenges. Now, the question probably is, really, how does it differ? Why say social and why say entrepreneurship? Because when I think of entrepreneurship, right, you would probably say, when I think of entrepreneurship, the one thing that comes to my mind is making money, starting a business. But we hear this term, social entrepreneurship. It's being mentioned in the nonprofit sector, it's being mentioned in the corporate sector. What is this social entrepreneurship all about? So, we're going to start by defining social entrepreneurship, building on what we've just touched on, right? The fact that social entrepreneurship differs from other types of from other types of entrepreneurship in that it is taking a step further. All right. But again, let's come back to this. How does entrepreneurship differ from other types of entrepreneurship, right? Social entrepreneurship. So, the focus of social entrepreneurship is on solving social issues, social challenges, social problems, right? By applying principles of entrepreneurship, business models, right? Um, Business approaches, right? To generate value that meets human needs and wants. right? This is the distinction, this is the difference. Now, with social entrepreneurship, in that the focus here is on solving these social issues. All right. Our focus is on on solving social issues towards the ultimate goal of generating value, the ultimate goal of meeting human needs and wants. Sometimes a startup, that is a for-profit startup, right, may start as a non-profit, right, for example, and then it decides to move into um, for-profit, right. If it starts as a non-profit and it decides to start to change into a for-profit entity, right? That's also something that happens, right? So the question might be, when it moves from being a non-profit into becoming a for-profit, does this necessarily mean that it has ceased the mission of this entity, the mission of this organization has ceased to be a social entrepreneurial initiative, right? The answer is no, right? Because with social entrepreneurship, an entity might be for profit, and sometimes that profit is plowed back into the work of the entity, or sometimes it's used in social impact initiatives, right? And in some circumstances as well, you might have an entity, an institution, right, being in the non-profit sector, and the work that they would be doing is that of that qualifies under social entrepreneurship because their goal, their ultimate focus is in solving social issues by applying principles of entrepreneurship. But again, what is entrepreneurship? Well, entrepreneurship is about generating value, right? Creating value. This is you know the entrepreneurship, right? Generating value. Sometimes that might be in the form of the business that you would have started, right? Or any work that you're doing to generate value, right? So the difference now with social entrepreneurship is that its focus is not essentially on generating profit. If the profit is going to come, the profit is going to be realized, then that's another good thing that's also being realized. But then when you're starting a social entrepreneurial startup or initiative, you're coming from a position of solving a social issue, right? Um, as opposed to generating profit, right? Now, but how do we get here, right? How do we get to the stage where we have a working entrepreneurship principle, a working business model or business entrepreneurial approach, right? And at that point, we would say that we have got a social entrepreneurial venture that is going on. How do we get to that stage? To tackle this question, we are going to segue into two focuses: social entrepreneurship. The first one is identifying the problem, challenge, or need, right? And in the second segment of this episode, we're going to talk about the approach, right? How does social entrepreneurship differ from other forms of entrepreneurship, right? So, what is its specific approach? So, we're going to talk about identifying the problem, challenge, or need. Yeah. So, how do because again, we have talked about identifying, we've talked about solving social issues to meet human needs and wants, right? So your question might be, how do I get to that point? How do I get to that stage where I'm now solving the social issues, right? And you've probably identified maybe the problem or something that bugs you, something that keeps you up at night, something that disturbs you when you think about it, or something that you are continuously questioning over time. And you're saying to yourself, why is this thing happening in the community, right? Or in communities, certain communities, why is this specific thing happening, you know? So, how does that get to social entrepreneurship? And the good part is now, even students of higher learning are also, adapting, and there are now, degree programs, curriculums, and so many other opportunities, so many other academic opportunities that young people, or prospective social entrepreneurs, can enroll in to learn about social entrepreneurship. So, why is this, the question might be, why is this, emerging as a trend, so social entrepreneurship, the true impact of social entrepreneurship, so it lies in the fact that it's not only about the work that's being done, but it's also about the impact that's being realized because of the work that's being done, right? So now, usually, how do I get to start the work that I would like to do as a social entrepreneur, right? Sometimes this is something that you can obtain from your own inspiration. You've always been passionate about youth development issues in your community, or women empowerment issues in your community, right? And this is something that you're saying, you know what, I would like to start um, doing the work in my community to empower women, right? Um, so this is your own inspiration, right? And in some circumstances, this social entrepreneurial venture is something that just starts in the moment, something that I like to call curious assumptions, right? Curious assumptions from observation, right? So let's talk more. Let's segue into identifying the problem, challenge, or need, right? How does that look like exactly? Does that look like going to a specific community, or thinking about a specific community, and you think about the challenges that they're facing, and then the next thing, you have launched your own organization, and your organization has started doing the work, right? But you know in as much as that organization would have started doing the work, not much is being realized in terms of the scalable impact that you would like to have, that you would like to realize. That is something that you're not realizing, and you're asking yourself, where did I go wrong in starting my social entrepreneurial venture? You know, so it's a good thing launching your organization, right? um, but then along the way, you're definitely going to need metrics that you're going to use to measure the impact or the success of your organization in meeting the goals, right? Meeting the goals of solving the social issues that you would like to solve, right? So, the question is, where do I get these metrics? Um, this might be the question for you, right? So, where do I get this metric? So, we're going to start by looking at the root of it. You know, now that you've said, oh, I would love to launch my startup, I would love to launch my organization in the field of social entrepreneurship, solving social challenges to meet human needs and wants, right? But how am I going to know that the work that I'm doing is making a real impact? what are the metrics that I'm going to use, right? And in some circumstances, for many of us social entrepreneurs, sometimes when we start our work, we start our organization has started doing certain projects, and everything is going well. There is sometimes, this feeling that we get that, I'm doing the work, I'm doing the projects, but for some reason, I don't feel fully content for some reason with this work that I'm doing, right? And sometimes, it's because you're not realizing the impacts that you had envisioned, right? And sometimes these impacts were not noted. You did not note your impacts, the goals that you have, the focus that you had for your social entrepreneurial venture. And one of the interesting things about going back to the drawing board, where you started, the vision that you had when you started your institution, right? One of the interesting things is that your focus, the focus that you had from the start, is not binding, right? It's not binding. It mustn't limit you. The vision that you had, the goals that you had. If you started an organization that focused on youth development, and now you're saying, I would like to segue into women's development issues, women's developmental issues. But then you're saying, oh, this was not the original focus when I started, so I can't, so you shouldn't, right? You shouldn't limit yourself to the goals that you had when you started, right? It's important for you to be open minded, right? In terms of expanding your organization, it's always a good thing, best practice, to think in terms of how you can expand the vision, how you can grow the vision, right? How can you better articulate? So when you approach your vision, if your vision was to um, empower women by capacitating them with skills for financial independence, this was let's say this was the goal from the start, the goal that you had from the start. But maybe the vision was to say, to empower, to empower vulnerable groups, and the women being your special focus group to empower, so your vision being to empower vulnerable groups, perhaps as a way of achieving social justice, because you feel that women have not had the opportunity to get access to they did not have access to opportunities, right? This is how you felt from the start. And so the social issue that you this was the social issue that you intended to resolve. But as you were doing that, the focus was on social justice. The overarching focus was on social justice. And so when you're thinking of how you can expand your institute or your startup, right, it's helpful for you to think in terms of the vision that you've had from the start. Your vision has always been social justice, right? And you keep on thinking, in what ways can I better articulate my vision? Can I better articulate my focus, right? As an individual, as an entity, right? In what ways can I better do this? So always thinking about the vision that you had from the start, is something that's going to help you, as opposed to thinking about you know what specific details that you would like to grow for your startup. Maybe all the time you're constantly seeing other startups that are growing, other institutions that are growing, and they're doing the work that that they're doing, and you're like, oh, I feel like I feel left behind. I feel like I'm not doing my best as a social entrepreneur, right? Because you're seeing other people, and somehow you feel like, oh, maybe I should take these ideas and integrate them, right? So one of the things that you need to be careful about is not losing your focus, right? Not losing your focus as a social entrepreneur, and not losing your focus as an organization, as an entity, as a venture. That, why did you start this work in the first place? What was your goal in the first place? What was your vision in the first place? So put your eyes on the vision. What was your vision? Right? So it's not essentially about what other people are doing, the work that others are doing, but it's essentially about you, about the vision that you had. And sometimes when an idea just comes, like, pops into your head, and you feel like, what, I'm focusing on financial independence, empowering women for financial independence so that they can attain financial independence, right? This is something that you had, the vision that you had from the start. But then now you're thinking, like, so in what other ways can I empower women, um with to become more financially independent, or in what other ways can I empower women to as a way of resolving the social justice that you see. So when it comes to growing your vision, extending your focus, expanding your focus, one of the things that you'd like to think about, right, because you are growing your venture, right? Also, it's also important for you to not be too rigid, right? Not be too rigid to say, my work focuses on, financial independence for women, and that's what I'm going to focus. So sometimes it's great to focus on one thing because um, it helps you focus, it helps you um direct all your energy and all your attention on one thing, and that's great because you achieve great results, right? But then again, right, there are these new ideas that are now coming, right? And you feel that, now I can integrate these things into my focus. There is, you shouldn't be rigid, you should be flexible to grow. So one of the important skills is the ability to adapt, flexibility as well, being very flexible. So your venture, your social entrepreneurial venture, is supposed to be adaptive, supposed to be flexible, right? The work that you're doing is supposed to be flexible. In terms of thinking, when you're expanding your focus, right? Trying to answer this question that you have when you started the work that you're doing, right? This is the social issue that I'm trying to resolve, right? And just thinking in terms of, um for this social issue that I would like to resolve, who is my target group? Who would I like to benefit from the work that I'm doing? If it's women, the next step is to engage with the women now, right? Because one of the challenges now with social entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurial ventures, for social entrepreneurs that are starting their work, starting their startups, they are starting their organizations, yeah. And sometimes you're like, okay, I want to focus on women's issues, right? But then sometimes you haven't defined the specific issues about women that you would like to resolve. One of the things that I'm trying to get to here is the issue of metrics. Okay, metrics. How do I know that I'm achieving impact? How do I know that the work that I'm doing is actually achieving what it was started for? Okay, I want to get to this. So you're passionate about women's issues. Great. You want to start an organization. Great. You've probably started this organization. Great. You have members for this organization. Great. But then, as you're doing the work that you're doing, you don't feel that click for some reason. You don't feel that click that, yes, this is great. I feel activated as I'm doing the work that I'm doing. My team, my organization as a whole feels activated as it is doing the work that it is doing, right? So where am I missing it? So the important thing when it comes to defining your focus, you've identified your target group, your beneficiaries, your intended beneficiaries, right? Now be clear. It's important for you to be clear on the problem or the issue that you're trying to tackle, the problem that you're trying to resolve for them, for this target group, right? So clarity is important, right? Because it's going to guide you and help you understand what it is really that you're working towards, that you're trying to achieve. So again, one of the challenges is with having ill-defined focuses, ill-defined focuses. And just in just a minute, I'm going to segue into that. Yeah. So with ill-defined focuses, you just feel like, okay, so I just have this idea. I want to help women. This is the idea. This is where it starts from. Quite simply, right? I want to help women. That's great, but that's not enough. It's great that you have the inspiration, thumbs up, right? But what it is about the challenges that women face that you would like to solve as an individual, right? So that is something to think about as you are defining your focus. But let's talk about defining this focus, right? Let's segue a bit into defining this focus because we've established that in order for you to define the focus of your initiative, your startup, your social entrepreneurial initiative of your organization, you need to understand the problem that you're trying to solve, what you are working towards exactly. Let's talk about problem identifying, identification, because we have established again that social entrepreneurship is all about solving social issues, right? But in order for you to solve these social issues, you need to know these social issues, right? More than just knowing them on the surface level, saying, oh, I know that women face challenges, and that's it. So you need to take an extra step, if the work that you're doing, if your initiative is going to achieve impact. So let's talk about identifying or articulating these problems, challenges, or needs. Right. So you've established that I want to resolve women's developmental issues. I want to help women. I want to empower women in my community. Right. Now, two things that are important for you during this stage. Right. During this stage where you're saying that I want to start new work in entrepreneurship, right? Now I know that I want to solve women's issues, and sometimes I think this is also important to clear. When your focus is on addressing social challenges, yeah, and you feel that you have the passion, you have the zeal, you have the commitment, and you have the enthusiasm to start work to empower women, right? Sometimes you don't necessarily have to have all the solutions figured out. You don't have to. You don't have to know how you're planning to solve these issues. That passion that you have, that thought that you have, that idea that you have to say, I would like to solve women's issues, it's enough. It's enough. it is enough. This is a great starting point for you, right? A great starting point for you. So many people who would like to solve, people would like to solve these social issues, would like to solve social problems. Sometimes they end up not starting maybe the initiatives that they would like to start, right? Because they feel that their ideas are not enough. My ideas are not enough. How is my idea going to make an impact? We've got so many organizations in the world, so many organizations in my particular country, right? And these organizations are working towards trying to solve this problem that I'm trying to solve. So why should I start this program? Why should I start this organization? Right? So many confusing questions. And at the end of the day, sometimes you end up not starting the work that you'd like to start. You feel like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Right? When you go back to your why, the fact that, you would like to start a venture. And you know why you'd like to start that venture, why it is personally meaningful to you, right? It means that you have got all that you need to start your project, to start your work, to start your initiative, right? So now that you have said, okay, I have an idea, or let me say exactly as we experience it as people, as human beings. Okay, so I'm thinking, I have a thought. My thought is to start a project that focuses on women empowerment. The fact that I don't have specific solutions, I don't have a plan, but I want to start, I want to do this. So the fact that I don't have a plan should not stop me. The fact that you don't know the specific solutions should not stop you. Okay. Your passion, that thought, that idea is a great starting point. Now that you're clear on the starting point, you've identified the starting point, right? And you are serious about it. You're like, okay, I want to start, but how do I start? You know? And sometimes people fail to start um, because of the fear of failure. They are afraid of failing. What if I start an organization and it fails? What if I start a voluntary organization and people don't join? What am I going to do? Right? It's always this fear of the unknown. How do I know that the thing that I'm going to start is going to be good enough? Right? How do I know that people are going to accept it? Right? Well, people are going to be attracted to your initiative, seeing the work that you're doing, seeing what you're standing for, what you stand for as an organization. And how are they going to join? They're going to join in the manner of subscribing to the values that you stand for as an organization, as an entity. This is what they are going to subscribe to because they feel that it resonates with them. It's an idea for goodwill, an idea for positive values, an idea for helping people, an idea for solving social issues. People are going to come. There are people out there who are just waiting. They're like, I'm looking to be a part of a community that deals with women's issues, but I just haven't found it. Right? And so it's you have this opportunity as a social entrepreneur to start something, and when you start something, people begin to subscribe to the work that you're doing. But then what actually gets people to subscribe to this? Well, you need to have values as an institution. You need to have a mission. You need to have a vision. But how do we get to this? And you need to have a focus. How do we get to having a focus? Right? Why should people volunteer in this particular organization right now? Yeah. So it starts with your focus. When people hear your message, they hear your message on social media, they hear your message on the internet, wherever they hear your message from. Okay. They are going to subscribe to it because it aligns with their values, it aligns with the purposes that they have, um, in terms of addressing social issues, right? But I'd like for us to focus on you, the social entrepreneur. How do I gain clarity? How do I attain that clarity, right? So let's talk about the problem that you've identified in the problem in your community, the challenge or the need that you've identified in your community. When you are approaching it, now I know I want to deal with women's issues. Women need financial independence. Can this challenge in any way be turned into an opportunity? Right? Can this challenge in any way be turned into an opportunity? How can I turn this problem or challenge into an opportunity? How does a problem or challenge translate into an opportunity? If you're talking about financial independence in a given community, it's likely that there is unemployment in that community. This is a curious assumption that I'm making, right? I like this term. We're going to talk about it in a bit. But if the women in community X require financial independence, it means that they are unemployed. What else does this mean? Well, it means that there are a lot of human resources in that community. This is another perspective. But here is a very important perspective that makes social entrepreneurship very interesting. So this community, financial independence, we are trying to resolve financial independence for women. What is the hidden opportunity here? The hidden opportunity is that we have women who have the inherent skills to build things. This is the opportunity. Okay, this is the opportunity. Who have got the skills and they have them already. What is the opportunity in this specific community? Well, the opportunity that is there is that when I go to these women and I sit down with them, have a conversation with them, tell them that they have got these inherent skills. Give them the knowledge, the education, and the information that they now need to start initiatives that can help them, enable them to generate income for themselves, and they would have attained financial independence. Now, you know that as an entrepreneur, if you face backwards and you go back to wherever you came from, you know that you have planted a seed in that community. And even if you are gone and you're no longer there in person, you're no longer there physically, these women have started businesses, they have started self-sustenance programs in their communities, they've built small businesses, and they've grown local economies that are plowing back in the same local economies. It's going to go for generations and generations and generations and generations and generations. So, how do we get to this in social entrepreneurship? Well, we look at the challenge with an open mind and we think really, what are the things that we can learn from this? Well, there is this specific reality in this specific situation, right? Let's say this is a challenge that is being faced by a specific community, right? There is this specific challenge, right? What are the things that we are learning, right, from this specific challenge? Okay. Now, in order for you to attain this lens that you need to be able to see the opportunities in challenges, yeah, you need to have a combination of what I like to call simple thinking, and you also need to have a blend of critical thinking. Simple thinking, critical thinking, simple thinking, critical thinking. The next time you're reaching out to a community or you're visiting a specific area, to do your research, to do your assessment, for a venture that you like to start, you know, just have this in mind. Simple thinking, critical thinking, simple thinking, critical thinking. Simple thinking. We miss so many opportunities that are embedded in the challenges that we see because we think too hard. For me, simple thinking involves asking the simple questions, starting from the question of why, questioning why things are now in the way that they are, why the current present is the current present. Tracing back that current present and looking at the trends, identifying the root causes and thinking about the root causes in a simple way. How did these things come to be? What certain mindsets, what certain ways of thinking probably contributed to this problem that we are now facing? Because for everything that is there, our minds, human minds, human mindsets, always have some form of contribution to that, in one way or the other. You know, if we are talking about the financial independence, so the financial helping women to attain financial independence to resolve social injustice. When you're going there as an entrepreneur, you're not going to be thinking about women's financial independence only, but you're going to be thinking about the social justice that is there. And you're thinking, why is it that there is this gap? If that is true to that community, why is there a gap in terms of acts, in terms of this wealth, right? Why is it men have got more wealth, more resources for more than women? It's probably like this because there was no access to the resources that would enable these women to earn an income, access to the resources that would enable these women to start wealth generating initiatives. So the access is an issue. What is the opportunity that we have? If there's a gap like that social inequality, it means that one group is benefiting. and one group is left behind. But this group that is left behind in terms of access to opportunities. It doesn't mean that this group doesn't have the potential. So, what is the opportunity? The opportunity is that there is untapped potential. Woo! Yeah, there is untapped potential. So, whenever you're connecting with the community, always ask yourself, what is the untapped potential here? And it doesn't mean thinking of, just thinking about the untapped potential that has been tapped into, the untapped potential that has been discovered but is talked about, but simply thinking about the untapped potential in terms of what you as an individual, you as a social entrepreneur are seeing when you are engaged in that situation. You need to have an independent mindset, an independent viewpoint, an independent way of seeing things. Okay. Okay. And okay, one of the most important questions to ask yourself, like I've said, what can I learn from this situation? And again, this comes from observation and working to listen for understanding. Yeah. Now, to listen for understanding, you would like to help a specific community. A specific community, well, children in this community are underprivileged. They have to go for longer periods without the resources that they need, without the stationery, without the books, without the uniforms, the complete uniforms. And then when they get to school, they are hungry because they left home on an empty stomach. So they are not going to be able to concentrate. Right? Okay. This is poverty that is now manifesting. But when you are going there as an entrepreneur, you are going to ask yourself, where is this poverty coming from? What is this source of this poverty in this community? Well, probably the source of this poverty in this community is probably because there is a lot of unemployment. There is a lot of unemployment. And when there's unemployment in a country, unemployment in a community, it means that there is a large pool of human resources, untapped potential, a large pool of human resources. Well, these children don't have the resources that they need to go to school. These children are hungry when they come to school, but their mothers are left at home, right? They are left at home, they are seated, they are not doing anything. Well, what if we can say we can invite these women to start small scale businesses. We enable loans to them. They start businesses, and these businesses provide um, resources to these children at very low cost, right? So really, this is just an example that I'm giving, right? And so what I'm trying to hone in on here is the idea of listening for understanding, listening to a community's needs for understanding when you going to that community to listen for understanding. And to listen for understanding, you don't need to think about the problems that they are facing at surface level. The fact that children don't have access to these resources, or their specific problems, their challenges, challenge A, challenge B, challenge C, challenge D. You're like, oh, is it? Okay, I want to start a program. Right, I'm going to start a program for this community. Okay, you go to the community, you identify these problems, and then you come back. No, when it's about listening for understanding, it's about listening to the stories of the vulnerable communities that you're trying to reach out to. Now, to listen for understanding, you need to cultivate empathy. Cultivating empathy starts with the self. Understanding yourself and your behaviors and your different emotional experiences, past emotional experiences, present emotional experiences, and ongoing emotional experiences is very important for cultivating empathy. Here's why I say so in relation to social entrepreneurship. When you connect to larger audiences, bigger communities, you are able to understand and listen to their different experiences and different stories from a point of curiosity. You have your own story as an individual, right? And then now you're going to this community. You're going to listen to the different stories of the individuals in this community. You're going to listen to the story of this community as a whole. So, in order for you to understand the story of this community as a whole, you need to be attuned to your own story as an individual. And you need to understand it, right? Um, it is only when you understand their different experiences that you are able to design a process that meets the needs that are being more defined in these different experiences that these people or communities are having, right? And then at the same time, here's another thing, another perspective that you might want to employ. What are you learning from this um, situation, this community that you're reaching out to? What are the new things that you're learning? What new information are you discovering from this situation? What are you seeing from that specific situation? Not what has been talked about before, not what has been mentioned before, but simply what is happening. What are you seeing? And write it down. Let's segue into the approach. Now that you've been able to articulate this problem, how are you going to solve this problem, right? So, again, involve the community you would like to impact in the solution. Do not make uninformed assumptions about the challenges these communities are facing. When you make uninformed assumptions, you are likely to approach everything on the basis of your own perspectives, which is good, but it may not be enough when it comes to social entrepreneurship. Okay. If your plan is to reach out to communities in rural Zimbabwe and you haven't lived in rural Zimbabwe, or better yet, in any rural setting anyway, it means that your individual perspective, you know, might not be enough to fully address the needs of this community. What am I saying? Am I saying that you should relocate to these areas? No, no. Okay. But what I'm saying is that as you are defining your focus, as you are designing your solution, integrate the insights, integrate the stories, integrate the experiences in your solution, integrate them with yours, and you have one nice, responsive blend. When it comes to solve problems, so when it comes to social entrepreneurship, right? When it comes to social entrepreneurship, it's always about the problem solving approach. Yeah, the unique approach to solving um, this problem. It's always about the responsiveness. So one of the main things that is going to determine whether your solution is going to work, whether your organization is going to be effective or not, is the responsiveness of your solution. How responsive is your solution to the needs of the community that you are hoping to help? If it's not responsive, then it's not going to work. Have you had those situations whereby you had um, donor organizations? They came in your country. Well, I think this is like especially the case in Africa. Not sure about other parts of the world, but okay, let's just say anyway, an organization came, right? And then after 5 years, okay, they came and then they built everything and everything was flowing. But after 5 years, gone. And then the people in that community, now that the organization is gone, right? Probably the people who were working on that project, they're like, oh, well, we wrote reports, we took pictures, we are done. We are done. Now we're segueing way into ethical entrepreneurship. We took projects, we took pictures, we are done. We put it on social media. People think that we're doing a great job here. And that's it. You go. And then 2 years down the line, that community is back in absolute hunger. Did you solve the problem? No. You managed the problem. You managed the problem. Right? So, coming back to the issue that we're talking about, the issue of assumptions and generating these solutions. Like I've said, these communities have got the perspective, they've got the insights. Let me tell you how I started a project that I'm currently running, the conscientization movement. I'm hoping that it's going to grow over time, right? But I'd love to share a story of how it started. I'd like to hone in on these solutions, right? So, the challenge that needed to be solved was the issue of child abuse, right? And so, to solve this challenge, right, to start work action towards solving this challenge, I was like, okay, why don't we do a workshop and invite children and invite non-governmental organizations. The non-governmental organization comes and speaks to the children, tells them about their rights, la 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 la. Everyone goes home, the children know their rights. Right? Okay. This was the idea. The idea was to help children be taught about their rights because this is what I thought was the solution. And it's a solution, and that's great. But at that time, I thought this was the ultimate solution, having those children, that group of children, taught about their rights, and then now they know their rights, and then they go back home. La 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 la. That's it. We've solved the challenge. But something happened. So on the actual day when we were planning to have the workshop, right, the non-governmental organization that was to come and facilitate, the workshop, they failed to show up. I kept on trying to call them. Guys, we're waiting for you. The children are here. Everything is set up, but we need you. Yeah. But They could not show up. So I just went, because in that moment it was like really a hard moment. I did not know what to do. And I just walked into the hall where the children were seated. And I heard them talking about children's issue. I heard them talking about their issues, amongst themselves, sharing stories, talking about children. So they had an idea of these rights. And they had actual stories, real life stories of children who had faced, stories they had heard of children who were facing abuse, children who had been able to overcome these issues. And there was a discussion going on, an active discussion going on. And the one thing that came to my mind, I was like, oh, at that moment, I had to listen for understanding. Not just to listen to say, oh, so what are the kids doing? What are the children doing now? As we are just waiting because we don't know what's going to happen. But I had to listen for understanding. So I had to come from a point of curiosity, wanting to know really what these children were talking about. And I realized that they had the solution. They had the insights. And one of the things that I learned was the importance of involving those who are affected by the challenge in the solution, because they are the ones who experience these challenges. They are the ones who experience the full impact of these challenges, right? They know how it feels. They know how it feels. They know when they experience the pains of these challenges the most, right? And so it is very important to include the insights of these groups, because as you are listening to their challenges, as you are listening to their experiences, you gain full clarity into the weight of the problem. You gain clarity into the possible root causes of these challenges. Yeah, thank you. So again, this is something that you'd like to think about as a social entrepreneur, right? Okay, right. Happy that you've been able to stay um, following through the session, right? I'm really grateful for that. I'm happy. I'm hopeful that you've been gaining some insights and some few notes so far from our discussion. If it has been beneficial for you so far, then that's great. Stay where you are, because now we're going to segue into ethical entrepreneurship. Remember when I talked about taking selfies at a project? Like, oh yay, we achieved impact. You post it on social media, you post it on Instagram, you post it on LinkedIn, and you're like, oh world, see the work that I'm doing. I'm doing a great job here. I'm impacting communities, right? And many times those kinds of entrepreneurs, those kinds of social entrepreneurs really rarely achieve impact. Because when I ask what impact, what was the impact? When one asks, what was the impact of the work that you're doing? I'm interested in knowing, how did you change the lives of the people who you were benefiting, who you were targeting? How did you change their lives? How did you transform their lives? Not what you gave them. No. If you went and gave them food and that food is finished, what's going to happen? what impact did you make in their life exactly? So now we're going to segue into ethical entrepreneurship. But before we segue into ethical entrepreneurship, we are going to hone in on the solutions. One of the benefits, if you are your venture is something that is, because for so many social entrepreneurial ventures, it's always about the people you're working with, the people you're targeting, right? So with these people, we talked about utilizing indigenous knowledge systems in your solution, because many times these communities will have the solutions, right? Many times, because they have the insights, they experience all of these things, right? If you say that, okay, the work that I'm doing now is going to include women, well, women already, they have got the potential, they have got the resilience, you know. Women are capable of starting something, but not only starting something, but sustaining it. Well, how do we know that women are capable of this? Well, look at the family unit. A woman can bring the family unit together, right? So they've got the ability to start something and sustain it, right? So already you are dealing with people who have got the skills. So again, when you're approaching these communities, understand, approach them from a point of curiosity. Understand that you're approaching people who are just as valuable as you are, who have got their own value, right? We've got their value. They are facing this challenge. This is something that is just disadvantaging them. But it doesn't mean that they don't have the potential. So approach them from a point of curiosity and understanding their needs. But as you're understanding their needs, try to understand what are some of the things that they are good at. And in your solution, integrate this, right? Bank on this, because this is a resource, an asset that you already have. So you can build on that. Right. And then on the flip side, on the flip side, these communities may not be fully aware of how the challenges and problems they face can be tackled or turned into solutions. And so it becomes the role of the social entrepreneur to bridge that knowledge gap. How do you bridge that knowledge gap? Well, through education, enabling access to critical information. So education must be a tool you need to be ready to deploy in your work. Education. I cannot overemphasize the importance of education in the work that you do. If you want to be effective as an entrepreneur, involve education in the work that you do. Education not only enables the realization of these much needed solutions, but it leads to enlightenment. Enlightenment that liberates the mind to think. Now we're going to segue into ethical entrepreneurship. Remember, social entrepreneurship starts from having a genuine care for other people. We become ethical entrepreneurs when we have a well defined why as our mission and our personal focus. And we are able to do good for others at that stage. So, to do good for others, we need to be able to empathize with others. Let's talk briefly about developing capacity for empathy. So it involves being able to listen to and accept different perspectives and viewpoints. Because like I've said, right, you are going to these communities and you have got your own assumptions. And if you have your own assumptions, and that's good. But now you have got your own assumptions, and you're like, okay, you are imposing this solution to this community, right? And you're like, okay, I'm solving this challenge. This is how it's going to be done. I'm the non-governmental organization here. I've got the resources, I've got the funding, and I'm going to do this solution, and I'm going to do this for you. And that's it, and that's great. That's good for you. I know what's good for you. No, don't make assumptions about the needs of these communities, right? You need to be able to accept their perspectives as you're generating that solution, as you're developing that solution. Their perspectives must be incorporated, right? And then ethical entrepreneurship involves the courage to act on your ideas and pursue your curiosity, being able to take risks. Yeah. Yeah. Now we're going to segue into sustainability. Why are we talking about sustainability? Meeting our own needs now while ensuring that future generations are able to meet their needs in the future. Why are we talking about sustainability? Why did we suddenly move into sustainability when we were talking about social entrepreneurship? Well, sustainability, meeting our needs now and ensuring that future generations are also going to be able to meet their needs. Why is it this important? Well, this is going to be a part of the goal. And it might be probably speak to your broader why. And this is very important for social entrepreneurs to understand because the focus of social entrepreneurship is on solving problems. So this social sustainability, economic sustainability, environmental sustainability, right? How can we this environmental sustainability? How can we protect our environment? How can there be responsible consumption? This is the economic. And the social, how can there be equality, inclusion, justice? All of those things. And we have our sustainability here, right? So this really gives you an insight into problem solving for communities, which is what social entrepreneurship is about, right? So this is the baseline. This sustainability is the baseline, and these three are the metrics used to measure the success of an entrepreneurial endeavor. This is your baseline. This is going to be your baseline, right? But the specific achievements you're going to be looking at the why from where you started. So you have your social, economic, and environmental. And some would say for the social, some would say the people for the environmental, the planet, the economic, the profits, right? So how does sustainable social entrepreneurship looking like? Well, look like, yeah? It looks like addressing the root cause of the problem. Think of a sustainable solution, right? So why is all of this important? Why is this center that we talk about important? Well, if there's no responsible consumption, it means that there's going to be inequality because there's going to be an issue of access to the resources, right? So we have a problem because these things depend on each other, right? So this is something that speaks to achieving balance in the community, right? In the order of our community, achieving that balance, achieving that stability. This is the sustainability part of it now. So the work that you're doing really is going to be working again with this baseline, with this baseline, with this baseline, with this baseline. Environmental, the climate crisis, the climate change issues are now a human security issue. So we cannot talk about economic prosperity. We cannot talk about responsible consumption when we have an environmental crisis. So it's important for you as a social entrepreneur to understand sustainability. Thank you so much for joining today's discussion, today's episode. I hope that it has been beneficial to you. As you walk away from this session, I hope that you're going to be able to think about ways in which you can better engage with the communities that you would like to work with, that you would like to help. In what ways can I be a better listener at community level, right? In what ways can I generate responsive solution? In what ways can I be an ethical entrepreneur, right? I thank you so much for your engagement, and I hope that is going to be beneficial for you. In our next episode, we are going to be talking about the journey of a social entrepreneur, right? How do I get to the goals that I would have envisioned as a social entrepreneur? Now that I've started my initiative, I've engaged with my community, I'm continuously listening. How do I get there? Where do I want to get to? This is what we're going to be navigating in our next episode. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that this session has been beneficial for you and that you're going to be able to uplevel your efforts as you engage with these communities. Thank you so much and see you next week. Thank you.